This deep tech incubator is the birthplace of companies like Rocket Lab, Avatana, and Mint Innovation. Now it's home to 20 new deep tech ventures. Let's go meet them.
So what we're doing is we're developing what's called a methane inhibiting bolus. So bolus, think of it like a cow-sized capsule.
Vinod Khosla from Khosla Ventures, his first 3 investments in New Zealand all happened inside this building.
Rocket Lab was actually down here, and we were down here as well.
Yeah, you guys were in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the cool happens.
This is where the cool happens.
We're going inside the lab where some New Zealand-born Nasdaq-listed companies first began. Sean Simpson, the founder of LanzaTech, who was once neighbours with Sir Peter Beck in here, is showing us around the building now called Future House.
And
so all of these companies you started here and then grew bigger and moved on.
Yeah.
Like moving out of home.
Exactly, and that's kind of the metaphor that all of these companies grow up and they leave home. And Rocket Lab did that, we did that, Mint Innovation did that, Doshel did that, and so we all kind of go out into the world.
So cool to see. There are still hallmarks of history in its walls.
So in here, this was a test room for Rocket Lab.
Stop it.
And in this room, Pete and Co would test out the various rocket propulsion configurations that they were developing, and they didn't all work. Yeah, when you're developing rockets, they don't all work every time.
Assault on physics is what it calls it.
and you have to take risks. And one of those rockets actually shook itself apart, and parts of the rocket went everywhere, and we still have embedded in the wall, in a frame now, a part of the rocket that embedded itself in the wall.
That's insane. No, that must have been such a blast, because that's like deeply wedged in there. You can't get that out.
This is a concrete wall that a large fragment of metal embedded into. So, but that's also kind of the benefit of a building like this. This is a solid concrete building that was built in the day to last. Controlled environments, safety precautions taken, and that's why it was done in containment. Yeah, it was contained. We're in the basement, and this thing was a test rig, and not everything goes well, and that's what happened.
That is so cool. So what year was that for Rocket Lab? Like year 2, 3?
I think that would have been maybe year 5 of Rocket Lab that happened, and I mean it was an exciting time. I mean, I think at that time, Pete was testing new rocket fuel formulations in this building. LanzaTech was developing ways to turn toxic flammable gas into fuel. We had Bioconsortia develop new bacteria to improve the crop industry. It was all on.
Well, because you were in here at the same time. On the basement.
Yeah.
So did you just sometimes hear just blasts and like
bits
of rocket flying to walls, and you'd be like, well, what are they doing down there?
There would definitely be the odd strange smell in the corridor, and you're like, okay.
A bit of fuel. Something's happening.
Do we have to open the windows now? And that was kind of the vibe of this place, and it still is. It still is. I mean, like today, I think we take a much stronger view on health and safety. People are kind of really trained in as they come into the building.
Good to hear.
Having said that, we have everything in here, from new ways to store energy, new ways to store protein, new ways to undertake farming, new ways to produce energy. They're all happening here, and they're all happening in New Zealand. I mean, in many ways, I think of this building as the most successful deep tech incubator in the Southern Hemisphere, if not the world. Out of this building came 2 Nasdaq-listed companies, 2 unicorn companies, and several other companies on their way to becoming unicorn Nasdaq-listed companies, like Mint, like Avatana, like Doshel. They came out of this building, and so this is the birthplace for innovation in New Zealand. This is the birthplace
for the world.
For the world, exactly. Like the companies that come out of here are born global on day one. They have to be. The market for their products is not New Zealand, it's the world. And they know that from the very beginning. And that's what probably makes them different to every company starting in the US, every company starting in Australia, every company starting in Europe, because in this place, they know they're headed somewhere else.
Talk to me about the culture of this place, because there has to be something special about the people and the relationships that you build in this basement,
Yeah,
to foster that.
This incubator was built on the principles that we had in those early days. We all were innovators. We all had our own ideas. We all had our own companies. And those companies had their own culture. The culture of LanzaTech was different to the culture of Rocket Lab. Culture of Rocket Lab was different to the culture of Bioconsortia. These were all individual companies. But when it came to things that unified us, like raising money, like doing deals with big corporate partners, we would get together and we would get advice. So when I got investment from Silicon Valley, I introduced my investors to Pete.
You're kidding?
Those investors invested in Pete.
What investors were they? Was that
was
Khosla?
Ventures. Khosla Ventures. I was lucky enough to meet Khosla first and attracted him to invest in LanzaTech. That was back in 2007. 3 years later, they're invested in Rocket Lab.
So this basement is actually Vinod Khosla's best kept secret.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It is.
like he's in this. I don't think there's a building in the world that he's invested in more companies.
I love that. That is so cool.
Yeah, and I think, and I really think that it's because we all are individual companies. We're not telling people how to run their business, but where it matters and where the things that unite all of those companies, like how to raise money, how to do deals, how to think about commercialization, there is advice here. There are people with experience. There's people you can talk to.
And also, I imagine just giving entrepreneurs the freedom and the space to test, to build.
No one knows these companies better than the people that started them. No one knows what the capabilities of these companies better than the people that started them. But those people that started them haven't necessarily always got the experience of their neighbors in this building, and therefore they're sitting next to them. They have lunch with them. They can discuss the future of their business, and they can all learn off each other. And that's the advantage of this place. It's kind of the way we can reimagine the industrial future of New Zealand and the world.
And you're back.
Back.
So you've come full circle, which is really incredible. You and Pete both contribute to this place.
So Pete is a big part of this place. Is an investor here. Pete is on the investment committee for our venture capital fund. So we invest in a lot of the companies that are here.
That's amazing.
And so, and myself, I sit as the chair of Outset now. I help run the facility. And I think for me, it's kind of the birthplace for a new industrial vision for the country. And it's the place where you can actually express your kind of technical imagination, entrepreneurial spirit, and do so surrounded by people who don't think you're mad, who do think that this is the way to go forward.
You're definitely still a little bit mad, Sean. Yes, just a little bit.
I'm
In the
hearing
best
that,
way, it's a compliment.
but not in this building.
Yeah, I feel like I'm too sane to be in this building.
like as soon as you come through the doors here, like the measure changes, the bar moves.
To see who is now moving the bar, Sean showed us the next companies defining the future. There are 20 ventures in this place, doing everything from biomedicine to AI and engineering.
Okay, so this is Energy Bank, and we'll go in here. And
I
these
love when
guys.
you just rule this place, you just knock on their doors. Sean's here, open up.
Good day,
Hey, how
how's
are
it
you?
going?
Yeah, good.
I'm glad I'm not
Whoa,
the only casually
holy.
dressed person.
No, this is awesome. Maddie, nice to meet you.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah, so we're building high-speed electric axial flow compressors, which is a fancy word for electric jet engines. So you can have a look at them there. And basically they're designed...
Too heavy.
Yeah. They're designed to go down a pipe.
That's like looks like a aircraft turbine.
Yeah,
Exactly.
There's lots of analogies, which, the other end looks better.
I see.
So we're building electric jet engines essentially to enable a larger energy storage system to be attached to offshore wind turbines.
We need that now.
Yeah.
ASAP. The small engines they're building are used to store energy created from wind turbines out at sea. How do the motors not burn out? Because if they're underwater, it'd be pretty hard to maintain.
Yeah, so the size of the size of the motor and how much power you get out of the motor, there's kind of two components to the power, there's torque, so how much force is in that rotation, and then there's how fast are you rotating at that speed. The nice thing with this type of turbo machinery is it likes to deliver its power through really, really high speed and not a lot of torque. So we're operating these at the moment at 60,000 RPM. We want to do 120,000, so 2,000 revolutions a second.
That's so fast you can't see it.
No, you can't see it. No, like these things can basically set a whirlpool off in this room. Like they're really noisy and kind of scary to be around when they're going full speed.
You don't want to get your finger caught in that.
While some of the startups are still building, others are busy commercializing, like Ruminant, which believes it has the solution to drastically reduce methane produced by cattle.
So what we're doing is we're developing what's called a methane inhibiting bolus. So bolus, think of it like a cow-sized capsule. Which,
A pill?
Yeah, like a pill that goes down into the animal's stomach, and it sits there, and over a number of months it releases its active ingredient, and whilst it's doing that, it knocks down or prevents the methane from being produced by the cow. So we have...
Stops it completely?
Up to about 75% per day. You know, boluses have been around for a very, very long time in agriculture. The compound that we use has been around for a long time as well, but it's that combination of putting the two together and coming up with a really novel treatment for a really novel problem is what is pretty special about us.
If it works, their product could also drastically reduce regulation costs placed on food producers, ultimately keeping our exports competitive.
How much is one of those pills for a cow?
We're still working through that at the moment, but we think it's going to be a really cost-effective intervention at the farm. So, and ultimately, we don't want it to be a cost. We want to make sure that farmers can actually make some money out of this.
After meeting with some of these companies, I wanted to know more about who's funding them and why. So I sat down with Angus Blair, who leads the lab's venture capital fund, to talk about the early stage asset class.
Angus, thank you for doing this and for having us in.
My pleasure.
This has been such good fun.
Glad you've had a good time.
Tell me more about that financing, that venture capital arm now. You've just been around the world trying to close that round, which you've been raising for a couple of years now.
Yep.
Give us an update on where it's at and the dollar value you think you might land on.
Yes, so we've so this is our second fund. The first fund we invested over sort of a 3.5-year period, during which we also started raising Fund 2. Fund 2's looking like it's going to be over $30 million, which we're very happy with.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a good step up from where we were before, and that's going to allow us to have an impact on another 20 great New Zealand deep tech startups, which is what this is all about. We did first close on that fund last year in December. We've made our first 4 investments. OpenStar is one of those investments, and we're really excited about the quality of science and engineering entrepreneurial talent in New Zealand, and we want to find the most ambitious ones of those and support them. And so our investors, we've got about 100 different high net worth individuals and family offices that have backed us to date. They're the ones who make it possible for us to go and take the considerable risk that it takes to go and invest in these types of businesses and support them to grow, to become the next Rocket Lab or the next LanzaTech.
Yeah, because venture as an asset class is inherently risky, right? Well, there's that stat always out there that 90% of companies fail. I'm sure you have a better chance in a building like this, given its history and the culture that you have here. But how hard of a sell is that right now to even high net worth individuals? Do you feel it's become easier, or is there still a massive gap that you're trying to fill?
I think we definitely went through a really hard period from a capital raising point of view, but it is trending back up. And yes, 90% of startups fail. In the venture-backed landscape, it's more like 50%, which still isn't a great number from what people want to see. But the main way to understand it's not to understand the failure rate, it's to understand the value of the success rate. And so if you hear people talk about power law outcomes, that means that one company is going to provide twice as much value as that next most successful company, twice as much value as the next, and on and on and on, which ends up rounding to something between a third and a half, aren't going to go the distance. But because it's venture capital, you need to be backing the things that can have these really outsized returns. And when you swing for the fences, sometimes you're going to miss, and that's okay. And so our investors all understand that the value that we create for them is going to be driven by a small subset of the companies that we back. But that's the point. That's how you create companies of consequence, is by taking really big swings. And that's what founders understand and aspire to do. And so we want to find the people who are willing to take a risk, but there's a 50% chance that there's not a business there several years from now, because they want a chance of that really big world-beating outcome.
You've spoken about companies like Rocket Lab, like LanzaTech, Mint Innovation, Avatana also all started here. What is the risk if we don't have something like this? Not saying that's going to happen anytime soon, but you're obviously doing amazing work here. I mean, if this didn't exist, what would be the future of this country and our economy?
So if you went and looked at the US economy or S&P 500 or the top 10 companies in the US in the 90s, you wouldn't see a lot of venture-backed businesses. If you go and look there today, I think it's 7 or 8 out of 10 of those raise venture capital. And so if you want to disrupt industries and transform economies and create material change and high value jobs, it comes from a very high degree of innovation, not incremental improvements. It comes from building things that are completely new. And so if we want our economy to look completely different 20 years from now and to have some really big businesses that employ a lot of very technical people and pay these really high wages, we're only going to get there through companies that are engaged in that level of innovation, and venture capital is a really important part of funding those kinds of risks to build those sorts of companies. Furthermore, we've got a bunch of problems in the world, and those problems are really hard. Those problems are all based in sort of physical reality, and for us to solve those and to contribute to those and to lead into those, you need capital to do so, and you need to take risks to do so, and that's what we're doing here. About half of what we do is climate tech related, whether that's energy generation, storage, industrial decarbonization, future food. About a quarter of what we do is med tech as well. And so there's
All the stuff Kozler likes.
no
wonder he likes this place.
I think all the stuff the most sophisticated investors in the world are really attracted to. The world of atoms is where the value is going to be created in these next 10 years. We've got AI, that's obviously a big disruptive point. On one side, how concentrated is that going to be in sort of incumbents? Where is the venture capital returns going to come from? Where are the big changes in industry going to come from? They're going to live in this sort of deep tech atoms world where we're tackling real problems that matter.
How do we ensure that ideas that solve problems like that keep being created from New Zealand? What sort of mindset and culture do you have to keep fostering to allow that to keep occurring?
Yeah, New Zealand needs more of a risk-taking culture, but it's here in pockets, right? And if you hang out here for a day, you might sound completely crazy if you were down the street and you're just part of your peer group, just a normal person here. Sean Simpson is the reason that I came here. I saw Sean Simpson speaking at Auckland University, 2008, and thought that's what we want more of. And
I want whatever that guy's on.
That guy, he understands what New Zealand needs to do, right? Which is to solve really, really hard problems and build technologies that can scale and go commercial and make a really big impact. So I first saw Sean Simpson speak in 2008. He was talking to the entrepreneurial club there, which I was trying to figure out whether I had something to contribute and be involved with. And I was just blown away by his vision for what you could accomplish from New Zealand in an area that no one was really talking about at the time. Incredibly disruptive technology, and something that, from New Zealand to be one of the only clean tech companies of that generation that's still around. It's just an incredible achievement to come out of New Zealand. And then weirdly, at the exact same time he was starting that company, he was starting it here with Peter Beck, who went around New Zealand.
Next door.
Yeah, that's right. Literally bumping into each other on the corridors, right? And Peter Beck asked basically the entire New Zealand ecosystem, I want to build a rocket company here. I think that we can do it. And no one took him seriously. I think Stephen Tyndall to this day is the only person who invested in that very earliest round. But Vinod Khosla took him seriously. He ends up raising capital from a bunch of the best VCs in the world to build that business right here in New Zealand and from this building, which still just blows my mind that when Vinod Khosla came here, first 3 investments all in this building, there's something, whether it's in the water, it's definitely in the culture. And it's this culture of founders helping founders, learning from each other. They've got really different businesses, but all deep tech startups have this, really, really challenging both customer journey and capital formation journey. And companies here help each other navigate that. And also you just do what you see, right? And so when people are working 100-hour weeks to hit a really important milestone, and that's happening just next door, you're more likely to do it as well. The people here are scientists, but they're really commercially oriented scientists who move at a very fast commercial pace. This is not a university lab. This is venture capital backed deep tech startups doing really hard things.
You mentioned ecosystem, and still talking about Sean and Sir Peter Beck as well. They're on the investment committee. It's those two and you.
And Peter Beck and Jess Gilbert today as well.
Okay.
So we've got a 5-person team. who votes on these. We have a fantastic partnership outside of that group as well that help identify the best opportunities and help support those opportunities to succeed. But yes, I think the most non-consensus group of investors that you could possibly find. I don't think we've ever all agreed to do an investment.
What's the rule? How many people have to agree for you to throw money at something?
We need 3 out of 5 to say yes, but sometimes one of those people's a reluctant yes. And I think that's how it should be. The venture capital is a non-consensus game, right? It's not meant to be obvious where the next great innovation has come from. They're very rarely obvious at the beginning, but you've got to build that conviction yourself and find these really talented people that have the conviction in themselves to take a massive amount of career risk, a massive amount of energy and time away from what's always a high opportunity cost. These are really talented people, right? They could go and make a bunch of money in way easier ways. Instead, they want to take a pile of risk. On behalf of humanity and on our investors as well. And that's just this fantastic thing that you have to get behind and nurture. And who better to learn from than the people who have been there and done that and built these really big businesses to those outcomes.
We've spoken about some of the global investors that have been interested in companies that have started here. Vinod Khosla, Peter Thiel, through Founders Fund, has also been involved in this place's history too. What sort of framework do we need to encourage more foreign investment from investors of that scale?
That's right. So I think a lot of the best investors in the world are doing, Series B, Series C here in New Zealand. Founders Fund, Khosla Ventures, Bessemer, DCVC, Breakthrough Energy. They're all looking down here and embracing the talent that we've produced. We provide, as an ecosystem, this great deal flow for them, right? Really competent founders, really competent engineering teams who have retired real risk, building real hardware, things that matter. That takes capital. That's why we raise funds. That's why the rest of the venture ecosystem raise funding. There's about $1 billion worth of VC capital in the market today in terms of active funds under management. So that's about the size of a medium-sized single firm in Silicon Valley. So it's really, really small market here. That has advantages for investors. It's basically like you're going and investing in Boulder, Colorado in 2008 or something like that, or Silicon Valley in the early 90s, but we're getting to play in this globally mature world. So I think there's an advantage for investors in participating in a market that is nascent, but has a track record. You don't normally get both, but we are facing capital constraints at that early seed, Series A stage. And we've had some great programs in New Zealand over the last few years that have made a really big impact. So NZGCP's Elevate has been a big part of catalyzing this system. Even though the market's small, it's still 4 to 5 times bigger than it was sort of 6 years ago. We don't want to regress from there. But if we're not getting that extra investment, at the moment it feels like there's about $100 million gap in terms of the talent and capability and startups, the value that is there, that needs the capital. I think we could absorb another $100 million a year of that sort of high risk capital. And if we don't have that, or worse yet, we go backwards and we end up with half the funds under management in the next few years, then we're not going to be maximizing our chance to get really lucky and find the next Rocket Lab or OpenStar.
So while this is all incredible, including many of the companies you've shown us today, this is actually under threat.
I think it's under threat of not achieving its potential. I mean, we're pretty proud of the fact that we haven't this isn't here because of government subsidies or anything like that. We've built this with a lot of investment into private shareholders. We've raised money into the manager as well. And so we know that we'll always muddle through, but New Zealand shouldn't want to muddle through, right? We should want to completely transform our economy and have a really big impact on the world. And we have the people and the talent and capability to do that. And so I think it's more about making sure that we don't miss the opportunity. And our investors really get that. And we're looking forward to welcoming more in.
You said next Rocket Lab. Who in here could be? Who's your money on?
Well, I think that OpenStar is the spiritual successor to Rocket Lab. I think you don't get to say, I'm going to start a fusion company from New Zealand unless someone came before you and said, I'm going to start an aerospace company from New Zealand. Everyone said no, and then you did it anyway.
And now people are taking Ratu more seriously because they're like, oh, he could.
That's right. Last time,
don't doubt these guys.
That's right. Last time we said impossible to do here. It happened, and that's where I feel that we're at with OpenStar today. We've obviously been heavily involved over the last 3 years. It's a very exciting company, and it's a company that I think is truly generational. And we're not. There's a lot of ways that this business is going to create value on the way to energy monopoly, $1 trillion markets. We've already built a business of consequence in New Zealand that has some of the highest concentration of talent and high temperature superconductors in the world. And the rest of the world is noticing this. And there's going to be a lot of other companies that will be formed as a result of OpenStar being here as well. And so I think we, just like with Rocket Lab and LanzaTech, a lot of the founders that we back have been part of both of those companies. OpenStar will have a similar effect on the economy here. So if I was going to choose one company from the portfolio, that's the one we're most heavily invested in, then it would be OpenStar.
We'll keep building. I'm excited to see what you do. Thank you so much for having us, Angus. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for watching Markets with Madison. If you enjoyed this interview, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. I do all of the research for these episodes myself, so your support means a lot. I always love to hear your feedback and ideas, so please drop any thoughts in the comments below. Now go put your money to work.